Good afternoon, my YouTube viewers. Crystal here. I just wanted to make you another video on the Kaggle website because what I wanted to do was I wanted to show you that I made another submission on the Titanic competition, and on this particular submission I got a score of 78229, which if you jump to the leaderboard, it said jump to your position on the leaderboard. It said that was the highest score that I've ever made. So I wanted to show you that. And basically what I had done was I had used the information from a website in order to get that high a score. So if I just take you to my Titanic Random Forest page, the first thing I'll do is I'll tell you that I got the information from www.ahmedbisbees.com blog Kaggle Titanic competition. So you'll know that I got the code from this particular website. So you'll know that I'm not plagiarizing the material. And this is actually a code review. I wasn't going to do a code review because I got the code from somewhere else, but because the code didn't work and I had to repair the code, I thought, well, I'll go ahead and make a code review on this code. Basically, in the article that I got the code from, the author had IPython, and I've never used IPython before, so I don't know if IPython is more forgiving of errors. But I put the code on Google Colab, and Google Colab went into error and it wouldn't work anymore. And I thought, well, I'll put it on Kaggle as well. And Kaggle went into error as well. And the reason why is because Kaggle is a subsidiary of Google Colab. A subsidiary of Google. So what I imagine is the Jupyter notebooks on Kaggle is pretty much the same as the Jupyter notebooks on Google Colab, since they both fall under Google. But I'm on Kaggle right now, and so what I wanted to do is do a code review of this code that I got from the article and explain it to you. So the first thing we did was we imported the files, and you can see we imported the files with this code right here. The next thing we did was we imported the libraries and modules, and you can see the importation of the libraries modules in this code right here. The next thing we did was we loaded our training data set, and I wanted to see the data, so you can see the data in the training data set. The next thing we did was we loaded up a code to look at the information on that data set, and you can see we've got the information on the data set now. And we wanted to see if there were any null values of the data set. So we found out that there are null values in age, cabin, and embarked in the training data set. We also described the training data set, so you can see a description of the columns that had numerical values. Then we loaded the test data set, and we did exactly the same thing on the test data set that we did to the training data set. So I wanted to see the test data to see what was in it, and so you can see that. And then I wanted information on the test data, so you can see the information. The only difference between the test data and the training data is the training data had a survived column and the test data didn't. Then we wanted a description of the test data, so you can see a description of the test data. And the next thing, we wanted to see if there were any null values in the test data, and you can see that there were 3 columns where they had null values, which was in age, cabin, and embarked. The next thing I did is, this is some code that I put in just to find out which columns had null values, and this was for the training data. So you can see which columns had null values. And I did exactly the same thing to the test data. I wanted to see which columns had null values, so you can see which columns had null values. And so what we did here, this code right here, was this code filled in the null values. So if the age was null, it got a medium value. If cabin was null, it got mode. If embarked was null, it got mode. If fare was null, it got a median value. And these two codes here, the ones that are remarks, basically what the author of the website had done was he had put in an extra column on the training data and the test data, and that extra column that he made was called died, and he did some mathematical formulas with that. Well, what happened was that column that he made caused the system to crash. And because it caused the system to crash, I had to go back and troubleshoot. And whenever I was troubleshooting, I found out that it was actually this died column, which is what was crashing the system. So I had to remove the code that referred to died just to get the system, just to get the computer program to work. So these two codes right here that I made those remarks, those were originally coded in the original magazine article, but because it didn't work, I had to make it remarks. The next thing we did was we made a violin plot. You can see the violin plot here. And we had to, this next piece of code right here, we had to make that remarks because it had the term dead in it, and that would crash the system. So I had to make all of that remarks even though I didn't delete the code. The next thing we had was we had some code to make a nice spot plot, and that was very pretty plot, and you can see that, and you can see the code. Then we had a subplot, a plot to do with the class of the fair, and you can see that plot. Then we had some more violin plots. And then what we did was we defined a module called status. And then we defined another module called get combined data. And then we printed the get combined data, and I wanted to see the combined data. The combined data is the test data and the training data combined. And what had happened was he had added a column and called it died. And that column that was called died is what crashed the system. So I had to remove that column just to make the program work. So, and then what happened was he made a subroutine to get the titles, and this is that subroutine. And here's the definition of the module to get the titles. So this is the next thing we did was we did combine data, and that means get titles. And then I wanted to see that. So we saw that, the combined data. And the next thing that happened, he wanted to do the combined data of title, and he wanted to see if there were any is-null characters. And in this, it shows you here that there was actually an is-null character. And then he wanted to print the combined data of the age is null, and you can see that there's 0 characters now, 0 is nulls. So we've got some more code here that grouped the information, sex, P class, and title, and you can see what he's done. we got another module that he created called Fill Age, and another module that he created called Process Names. And then basically combined data equals process names. And then I wanted to look at the combined data to see what it said. We had another module to process fares, and we had another module to look at the combined data with the process fares. But you're not looking at it anymore. Basically, what happened was we didn't show the data set in that routine. And I'm not going to edit it with that routine because I'd have to go back into Kaggle to do it. And I'm not going to do it while I'm doing this presentation. What we did was we made another module and called that Process Embarked. And then we combined the data so you can see what it looked like. Then we did another module called Train Cabin, Test Cabin. And another module called Process Cabin. And again, you can see the combined data. He wanted to see what the combined data looked like. We had another module called Process Sex, and he wanted to look at that. Combined data equals process sex. Then we had another module called Combined Data Process P Class, and you can see what he did there. And then he wanted to look at that, the process the P class. Then we had another module called Clean Ticket, which is quite long, and that module was okay. And at the beginning of this video, I gave you the name of the website that I got this code review from. So if you wanted to use that website, you can go to that website address in the beginning. So that way you don't have to type all this stuff up by hand. Then we did another module called Process Family. And again, we combined the data into Process Family, and you can look at that. And now what we're doing is we're importing all of the data so he can make a prediction. So we defined a module called Compute Score, and we defined another module called Recover Train Test Target. And so what he did was he used the random forest classifier to make the prediction. And then we had some more features in the prediction, and we made a graph. And you can see the higher priority values to make the prediction. And so here what I did was when the system crashed and the system wouldn't work anymore, what I did was I put in the code to see if there were any null values in test data, and there are not any null values in test data. But when the column called died was in test data, every single value within that column was not a number. And because it was not a number, it caused the system to crash, specifically in the transform code. There was a code called transform, and that's where the system locked up and wouldn't work anymore. So what we did was we checked to see if there were any is-null characters within the train data, and there are not any is-null characters within the train data. And you can see this is what I had done was when I was troubleshooting the data, I had decided to fill these NaN values with the median value, and it didn't work. It didn't work because I think that one time whenever I was first doing it, I tried to fill it with a null value. So every value was null. So that meant survived was going to be 1. So that meant that the prediction wasn't going to work out, because I tried to run the prediction and every outcome was a 1. So that meant everybody survived. And so I decided, okay, well, let's try median. But you couldn't use median, because median was either going to be a 0 or a 1. So what was the median going to be? Was it going to be 50%? So then we did another test on test data to make sure that we didn't have any null characters, and we didn't have any null characters after this died column had been removed. So then we made our model for select from model, and we did the prediction, and we shaped the file. And we did the prediction on the test data. And this is where you actually get into performing the logistic regression to make the prediction. And you can see that it worked this time. But where the system crashed originally was this code right here, where it said test underscore reduced equals model transform test data. That was the code that actually stopped working, because it wouldn't accept it. It would not accept any non-null characters. And because it wouldn't accept any non-null characters, you had to replace those non-null characters with something. And then because you were replacing the non-null characters with first a 0, and then secondly a median value, it meant that the program just didn't work. And the only way that I could get the program to work was to delete that column that said died, or actually delete the code or remove the code where he created a column that said died, because that column was not in the original training data and test data. He made that column, and there was nothing in it. There was nothing in that column. It was all empty spaces, and transform just refused to work. That's one thing I found out. So here we do our logistic regression in this code. We've got another module called RunGS that he's created. And then these are the targets. I wanted to see what was in the targets, because when I was troubleshooting, I had to see what was actually in the targets. So this is the array of targets that tells you everything that's in there. And then so we carried out our prediction, and then we're doing the output. And we save the output into a submission file, and this submission file is here. And that's what I submitted to Kaggle. So that completes this code review. I've showed you all of the code that I put into the system to get the highest value that I had achieved so far. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to find a code to get higher than an 85%. And the reason why is because I was watching a video, or I read an article where it said that you're not going to get any higher than an 85%. The people that have scored 100% or higher than 85%, what they've gone is they've gone onto the internet and they have researched the people that survived, and they have written into the code the very specific people who have survived. And I just think, well, I want to do other things, and I want to enter other competitions. So I think I'm going to stop at this Titanic competition. But like maybe if I find some code that'll give me a better than 85%, I'll be very happy to use that code. I also think it's worth noting that I was in the United States Air Force for 15 years, from 1979 to 1994, and I was an electronic technician. And so I had to troubleshoot systems to get them to work. And that's how I was able to troubleshoot this faulty code, because when I was in the military, I had to troubleshoot systems. But what I need to do is I need to learn how to create systems, because I never had to create systems when I was in the military. I had systems that had already been created by somebody else, and I just had to troubleshoot them and find out what the problem was and get them to work, which is why I'm good at troubleshooting, but I need to hone my skills at creating. So this concludes my presentation on the data review, code review for the Titanic competition. If you enjoyed watching my video or learned something from it, please like, subscribe, and share. If you like the work that I'm doing, I've got my email address down below to my PayPal account if you wanted to leave a donation to the PayPal account. It will be greatly appreciated and help me defray my many expenses. And thank you very much for watching this video, and I look forward to watching the next one. Bye.